So we are going to create this cafe animation now, where the construction, all the elements, all the parts of this cafe, all the layers come together and form this structure, and we see the finished environment and the whole cafe scene slowly coming to the life. So this we are going to do with the exact same methods which we just discussed in the previous chapter. So this is Ram from CrossMind Studio. Welcome back to the Geometry Node Introduction series for the beginners. So let's get to the work. First and most important thing, I have this file. So let me just give you a breakdown of what's going on. So you can ignore some of these objects, just ignore these and only focus on the activated layers. So how this is constructed, basically I took a hint from a few of the images on the Google. I basically searched for how the cabinets are constructed with the wood structure. So under the final layer, we have all these wood planks. These are unique pieces of geometry, and none of these are basically part of the geometry nodes. The reason behind why I haven't made this model using geometry nodes is because, let's say if you are coming from SketchUp or if you're coming from some external software, so in that case, if you have a geometry which is not really made with the node network, and it's like the product or the file could come from anywhere. It's not necessary everyone here is using Blender. Some are using it for the presentation purpose, for the benefit of the animation or something. Then in that case, the methods are exactly same. Just with the help of instance nodes, we can access these collection, the parts which are within the instances. Here's the final layer of this cafe, and just something really basic I have put together for this presentation purpose. And then under the final layer, we have the roof tiles, we have the doors, we have the planks, and the roof framework, wood framework, floor tiles, which are these, everything made with the basic primitives. Then we have the balconies, this and that. All right, so we are going to use all of these and slowly introduce animation into these collections one by one with the help of geometry nodes. So let's hide all of that. So before we start the animation, I just wanted to clear out something. Let's say if you're bringing geometry from outside of Blender, you have something like this, you have tiles or something, and Control D. Now let's say if you have something like this. So when you import the geometry from external softwares, sometimes you have everything combined into one geometry, and the pivot points, the origin points are not really aligned well. So there are a few things you need to take care of before you start animating these things. So first thing is you need to go to the edit mode and separate your geometry by loose parts. So even now, each of these pieces have the origin aligned to the original geometry point. That hasn't changed. So you can select everything, set origin to geometry. Now everything is right at the center. But if you still need to tweak this, you can click here, origins, and move it anywhere you want, GX, GY, simple transformation. Now if you enable the individual origins, you can see the pivot points are somewhere aligned to their corners. And one more thing. So let's say you're planning your animation. You just need to put a few thoughts together before you really start constructing, making your animation. First thing, let's say I have these planks and the pivot point is right here, the origin point, right at the bottom. So let's say if you're modeling this and you make a duplicate of this, Shift R, the axis of these objects are Y direction pointing outwards. So if I rotate this one in the Y direction, this would rotate outwards. Now, if I make a duplicate of this for the other wall, and if I turn this other way, like this, if I rotate these into individual local axes, now this is folding inwards, this is folding outwards. So you need to just make sure that axes, the alignments are consistent and everything is pointing in a way you're planning your animation in. So just don't mess up the axis and the pivot points, the origin points and all that. If the walls are pointing outwards, y-axis is pointing outwards, then make sure the similar is being followed here. So the local axes are Y here. All right. So simple points, but really important stuff. Now back to the main file. So let me just create one simple plane here, and let's call this plane animation. All right. So within this, let's create one simple geometry node network. So we are going to bring in models one by one. So let's start with the floor blocks. All right. This one, separate children, relative, and you can actually get rid of this. We don't really need this. So the effect that we want to use on this. So in this clip that you see, let me try to break it down. So what's happening is we are deleting the geometry, the pieces coming together from nowhere. We are basically reversing the effect of deletion. The order, whichever we are using, the same texture we are using, we are going to use that for the deletion, for the rotation, and for the scale. So we are basically going to keyframe everything on their default position and then reverse that and misalign everything and delete everything, so that when we reverse that effect, it looks like everything is coming together and forming it and settling to their default position. So let's say translate instances, or even better, rotate instances. So we could rotate these instances in the Y direction. I don't really plan to rotate these with the even numbers. So instead, I'm going to use combine XYZ, break down these axes, and plug this into Y. In the timeline here, what we are going to do is map range this effect. So let's see how we can set this to default. If I bring this to 0 or something, yeah. So if I bring the maximum number to 0, this is the default position. So let's set keyframe on number 50, set a key for all of these, go back to the 0 and try to misalign this and move this outwards or something like this. All right, set a key for all of these and you have this animation of things coming together. Now scale instances, and in this as well we are going to use the same texture, but this time we want to scale these into, let's set this to 1, the default value. So the Z scale looks fine for this effect. We want to trim down these planks, and then again with the help of map range we could tweak this effect. So first, frame number 50, let's bring this to default or something. You'll have to scrub these numbers and see how you can arrive to the default position. And then here we are going to basically exaggerate this effect a little. We want to see more of this texture in the alignment and the scale. Just like this. All right, and then delete geometry, and we want to delete the instances and use the same selection based on this texture. Bring another map range and see which of these numbers work well. This number works well. So frame number 50, set this to 1, sorry, something like this. And then here we can delete all of these and just try to adjust the animation. So pretty simple stuff. Now we have a simple node tree which is taking care of this animation that we have made, a simple construction. Now what we can do is use the exact same formula and apply it to the rest of the collections. Next, drag in the second layer of the floor tiles, plug that here. So for this we are going to copy the same animation. So let's make a duplicate of all of this that we have made here. The only unfortunate part is that when you copy all of that, the animation doesn't copy. So that is something we have to do manually. So let's delete this collection, plug our new collection, which is the floor tiles, and separate children, relative, and combine these two with the help of join geometry node. All right. So on the frame number 50, we are going to set a key for all of these at their default position. And on the frame number 0, we are going to basically start tweaking these numbers again. A pretty simple thing. Then you can simply select all of these nodes and select the object and shift all these animations, the keyframes, slightly further, so that we have first construction of the base and then construction of the tiles. So same thing we are going to repeat for the third layer, which is going to be wood framework. So let's drag that here, delete the floor tiles, connect this to the rotate instances and separate children relative, and join this to the join geometry node. And if you're having difficulty joining these two, you can simply select these two and press F, and that will connect these two nodes. All right. So slowly we are going to build up the entire structure and do the same animation for the rest of the stuff. So frame number 50. Now here one thing is that we are not really going to rotate these instances, instead use the translate instances. So slightly different kind of animation. So you can switch this node with Shift S and go to the instances and use the translate instances. So I think we need to translate these in the global axis vertically. So use this into the Z direction. So first I'm going to set the key for all of these at the default position, as everything seems like it's set to their original position. Then go back to frame number 0 and start tweaking numbers like this. I don't think we need scale instances here. We just need delete geometry, and that would be, I think this number should do. Something like this. So far so good. Let's do the same thing again. Join these two with the help of F. And the next collection is wood framework, roof framework, planks. So let's use the planks first. So put the planks here, delete this old collection, plug the new collection here, separate children, relative, set the keyframes on the frame number 50 for their default location and rotation. And I think the rotation here is somewhat messed up. So just setting default keys, go to frame number 0, start messing this around, misalign this everything. So unalign everything basically, reverse this animation, exaggerate the texture for the scale, and start deleting this with the help of this node, delete instances, and you have this animation. Now we are going to select the object, select these nodes, press A to select all the keyframes, shift this ahead, and you have this animation. Same thing, next collection, roof wood framework. So let's select all of these again, Shift D, replace it with this collection, separate children, relative, and or you could simply actually select collection from here. That also works. Combine these, set a keyframe for all of these values, and then deconstruct this like this. So since the pivot points are, the origin points are perfectly aligned and well thought of, I'm having pretty easy time figuring out the animation. If all of these so select all these objects, select all these nodes, select all the keyframes, shift this ahead, there you go. So let's do the same thing again a few more times. So here, next thing we need is the roof tiles here. So frame number 50, set keyframes 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4, go to the frame number 0, misalign this. Let's see in which direction we need to twist this. I think the X looks perfect. Something like this. The scale, we don't really need the scale instance here in this animation. Instead, we are just going to delete this. Now, what we can do is same thing, select all of these nodes, shift this animation right after the roof construction happens. It's just that the deletion happening slowly, so we could speed this up. Let's mute this node. So something wrong with the rotation here. Unmute this. So the last layer, which is the final layer here, the animation of this one is done separately. So I'm going to give you a breakdown of what's going on here into this one. So pretty simple animation. Let me just get rid of unnecessary stuff. So here I have this geometry, the main cabin outer layer, and on this geometry I'm using mesh Boolean. So let me just arrange this in a way that it would be easy for you to understand. Yeah. So in this geometry, I'm using mesh Boolean node, and in this mesh Boolean node, I have a simple cube, which is this much big, this big, and in this we have a displacement, which is made with the help of set position node, which we have discussed plenty of time in previous chapters. And then in this set position node, I have a Musgrave texture. Then I simply aligned this tool with our cafe and animated the Z position. So this moves upwards and set shade smooth, and that goes into the Boolean. So what we see is the cutout happening. So basically this thing is cutting our cafe, the geometry of the cafe. That's it. And the second thing is I have another collection which is called window Boolean. I have 3 cubes here, and these 3 cubes are being scaled with the Musgrave texture like this, simple stuff. And that goes into another Boolean node in which I have this geometry, and right after this animation finishes, I have this animation starting up, which slowly takes place and cuts this geometry and makes the windows. That's it. So pretty simple stuff. This is just for your reference here, in case if you need to take a look twice. Rotate instances is not required here. Translate not required here. So simple, clean node tree here. All right. So simple effect. We have another. With the help of a few simple effects, we have reached so far. So let's select our cabin again. I'm going to give you a breakdown of one more thing, and this is the last one. So let's make a duplicate again, combine this with the joint geometry node, which is starting to disappear for my eyes, or a hood. I think I have a hood somewhere, hood large. Yeah. So these things. These we want to rotate and scale and delete as well. So on the frame number 50, let me just isolate this one with the Control Shift and click. So node wrangler is enabled, separate children, all of that is here. So let's set a keyframe for the map range here. And this one we want to scale evenly, not in one particular axis. So get rid of this one with the Control X, and that will keep the connection. So go back to the frame number 1 and start messing this around. I think this is going to rotate in the Z axis like this. Set one key here, and then we need to scale this one, clamp, something like this, and then we have a delete node. There you go. Let's select all of these nodes, shift this animation further, right after the windows are constructed. There you go. So similarly, I have geometry for the windows, the big window, the small window, and the doors. So exact same thing I did for all of that. I mean, these pieces are separate pieces, exactly like the planks. So I'm not really going to repeat the process for these small things here. So that is what you see here. So now you might be thinking that we have a common input among all of these. We have a Musgrave texture. So now if you spend some more time on this, you might be able to combine all of these inputs, combining all of these together into one node. So let me just save this one. Now what if we get rid of all of these, Shift F, and delete all of these, and select all of these, press F. So we have one texture in all of these. One texture input is deriving all of the animation here. So if you change anything about this texture, let's say if you bring something else, let's say gradient, then you'll see a different kind of effect here. Map range, slightly different formation, and which you might be able to make something useful out of if you spend some more time on this. But this is the interesting part. I mean, now you have everything set up. You can keep on exploring, try different textures, try different inputs, maybe try proximity with a different object, or maybe combine two of these into a mixed node and see what happens. What else you can do is, you could also, let's say you have this one. Now you can tweak this number with the map range, and this would look like a slightly shaky part. I mean, you can use this in rotation. Let's say if you wanted to show one old cafe or something where everything is shook up slightly. Now this looks slightly older cafe as compared to this one. See if a few of these planks are coming out. Just playing with the numbers, seeing the possibilities here. So you have another version of the cafe which looks slightly more messed up. So that's about it for this chapter, and here's the final animation that you see. Let me just show you the final animation here. But after putting the windows and everything together, all of this looks much more detailed. A few more elements, but with the exact same process. Now one thing I wanted to mention here is that this animation, let me just get rid of the clouds, which is making my file heavy, and the ground. Yeah, this is much better. So the balcony is using 3 objects. So one of that is a simple curve, this one, and this we are animating the default, the curve animation that you get from without the geometry node basically. So here I'm trimming this curve, the end and the start, animating this value. So not necessary. If you can actually do this here, then why use geometry node? Not really a rule. So, and the same curve here I'm using with the help of geometry node. On this I have instanced these poles here, which are this one. So this curve I'm trimming here. So this curve, let me just isolate this. So this curve manually made, I'm trimming with the help of this node. So when that happens, the instances move according to the trim value. And then I have a delete geometry node, which basically right before the animation starts, it triggers the deletion. So right here I have 2 keyframes. Here when this is set to 0 in the selection, that means this is off, deletion is off. Here deletion is on, set to 1. Pretty simple stuff. So that's it about the animation. And other than this, just to make this scene a little more presentable, I have made a ground geometry. So the ground is using a simple grass which I have made. So very basic, the most basic grass you can actually make in this world. So here's the grass, I think somewhere here. Yeah, this pretty simple grass. This is being instanced on the ground part here. Let me just show you the node network. So I have distribute points on faces, and on this ground I have a very simple weight paint, this one. So wherever the weight is, only there you will see whatever is coming within the frame. Only there you will see the distribution happening. Then instances on the point, and then the object, which is the cube 181, which is basically the grass. The scale of the grass is being modified with the Musgrave texture, and the map range here basically helping us with the animation. Let me just show you. So this value, these values are helping us scale the grass up and down. At the early frames I have none of these grass, and this slowly I start seeing more greenery on the ground as the scene is coming together, and that's it. So those of you who are interested into knowing render settings, even though there is nothing much going on here, let me just give you a breakdown quickly. This is set to the Cycles render engine, and the final render is done on the 400 samples with the help of OpticX renders the denoiser here. And the shaders are the most basic shader you can actually think of. So the shaders are pretty flat, nothing literally. So the shader values, let me just show you what's happening in the main cube. So this is the main cube. I have made a texture, pretty simple one, and that is assigned here. This can be deleted. There's nothing. This is pretty simple with a simple bump and simple texture, nothing professional. I've done a pretty lazy job, and the only thing is I'm using a UV map attribute here. If you've seen the chapter number 4, you would know what this means. When you're working with a geometry node and when you create something complex like a Boolean effect or something, the UV starts to fall apart. So what you can do is bring a UV map attribute, and this would use the UV which is in the object data right here, UV map 001. So that is what I'm using here. And this would align my texture properly. That's it. The grass is flat green color. The background is using the default. Let me just show you. So the Nishita sky, if I render this without the scene lights, so this is the result with just the sky. And if I enable the scene lights, this is the result with the lights. So basically I have added one or two area lights here just to fill in all the dark spots here, and that's it. And then you have the signboards, all that cute stuff around it, and this is it. You have your final scene here. So I hope all of this makes sense for you and helps you understand the animation and motion graphic process, the beginning part, and makes it better, helps you in some way. And just give it some time, just start exploring whatever thoughts you have in your mind. Just start breaking it down into simple things. What is the motion? What is the texture? What is the kind of order? Based on that, pick up the nodes. If it's random, pick up the texture. If it's aligned, pick up the gradient or a uniform texture like a radial gradient or something based on the position. So once you start exploring multiple ideas, maybe make 10 or 20 of abstract animations or some simple motion graphics like this, then you will be in much better place to take on much more complex tutorials or much more complex effects. You'll be able to think on your own, you'll be able to create on your own. You won't be requiring tutorials to make something complex. Yeah, just give it some time and let me know your thoughts. I'm pretty sure there is always a better way to deal with the geometry nodes. So I'm here to learn as well. Just let me know if something can be done in much better way, and something which can actually reduce the effort which we have put in this tutorial chapter. And I will add those comments into the pinned comment for the community to be able to read that and correct any errors which I have made here. So all the files are on the Gumroad. If you want to look into the files, people on the Gumroad and the Patreon are going to get the files. If you have already bought the pack, you just wait for the update. I'm just going to clean up these files and put it up on the Gumroad. So thank you for tuning in, and just tag me on Instagram, InstaCrossMind. I would love to see what you make with this one, and I'm pretty sure even the beginners can take on this one. So just pick up your model, make something with the basic primitives, start exploring, and you will surprise yourself. So I'll wait to see your artworks. Till the next chapter, take care. Bye-bye. Bye.